So good morning, everybody. My name is Kandyce Perry, and I am the Director of the Office of Environmental Justice at New Jersey's Department of Environmental Protection. So thank you so much for being here this morning. You could be doing anything else with your weekend, but you decided to be here with us to learn and kind of engage with us and have this opportunity of relationship building. So I want to applaud you for being here today. It just shows how committed you are to your communities and to your neighbors and to yourselves, and for the promise of delivering justice to the state of New Jersey. And so hopefully this meeting today is just planting the seeds of our continuous relationship of working together to design solutions towards environmental justice. And so I want to just start with a few thank yous. First, I want to thank all of our DEP staff in the room for dedicating your time on a Saturday, and also all of the service that you do every single day for the state of New Jersey. Thank you for being here. I also want to thank the staff within the Office of Environmental Justice. They are the ones who invited you here today and set up all of the logistics and the food and lunch. So thank you so much to my staff for all the work that you do every day. And so we're excited about today. We have a lot planned for you. We're going to dive in some topics and have some time for questions and discussion. And we hope that you stay with us as we travel through this series of seminars that are really targeted to members and residents of overburdened communities, so that we can learn together and design solutions together for the state of New Jersey that protects our health and our environment. So with that warm welcome, I want to invite today's first speaker, Commissioner Shawn LaTourette. He is the commissioner of our department and will give a few words about the DEP and an overview of who we are, what we do, and why it is so important that we gather here today for this topic. So I'll pass it over to you, my boss, Shawn LaTourette.
Well, thank you so much, Kandyce. And I'm trying to figure out where to put my coffee/power juice. Well, good morning, everyone. Oh, come on, y'all can do better than that, even on a Saturday. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, and good morning to all those who are joining us online as well. As Kandyce mentioned, I am the Commissioner of Environmental Protection for our great state. And I thank you for joining us this morning to learn with us, and so importantly that we can learn from all of you as well. What I wanted to do this morning is offer a little bit of table setting, if you will. You know, there are folks I see right around this room who have been engaged with our Department of Environmental Protection for years, decades. Then there are some new faces who may not be as deeply engaged, as familiar with the DEP and what we do and who we are and how we do it. And so I wanted to offer just a little bit of context for everyone, so that as we go through this seminar series, you can understand and maybe have greater awareness of the great reach of the DEP and all the things that we do and can do or should do, could improve upon, could do better, and also some of the limitations. DEP being but one part of our state government, one component of what I would typically refer to as environmental governance. I want to give you a sort of 101 in that, if you'll go with me on that journey, and I'll be brief about it so that we can have some time for questions before we move into the next point of discussion this morning. So, the Department of Environmental Protection is many things. One of the ways to think about the Department of Environmental Protection is probably in categories. Right? And so if you're first time learning about the DEP, I would write these categories down, because they will be the guiding forces of how you engage both with our department, but how you help others to engage in protecting their environment. So what do we do at the broadest level? Our job is to protect public health and the environment that we share. And those words are very, very explicit, right? To protect public health and the environment that we share. And how do we do that? We do that through protecting natural resources like our air, our land, our water, our fish and wildlife, our open green and wild spaces. We do that work of protecting public health by protecting environmental features of our communities, because it's only through well-maintained environments that we can improve upon and protect public health. And folks get this wrong a lot of the time. They think of environmental protection as this endeavor to protect the trees, right? And yes, that's true, but we don't protect the trees or the water or the air just for the sake of natural beauty itself. We don't protect the environment because we love the trees. We protect the environment because we love who those trees protect, right? And what I mean by that is every natural resource, our air, our land, our water, they're always doing something. Something invisible, but something really, really important that ultimately protects public health and safety, right? So if we remove all the trees that line our riverbanks, right, the trees whose roots literally hold together the riverbanks and protect us against flooding, we may see more flooding in our communities, right? That's just one example, but all of our environmental media kind of works that way. So how do we organize it, and how do you engage with the DEP? Right? So largely, the DEP is organized according to these main categories that I'll share with you. Our air, our land and watersheds, our waterways and water quality, our contaminated sites and hazardous substance concerns, places that have long been harmed by past industry or are newly the victim of some type of environmental material spill, right? So you have air, land, water, hazardous materials, right? And you also have our solid wastes, our landfills, how we manage our trash, our recycling, right? These are the main pillars of environmental management, right? And that is common throughout the nation, how environmental organizations within government are shaped according to these main sort of 5 categories. In New Jersey, we also have some other special features that other DEPs around the country do not have, right? We are also the Department of the Interior, meaning that we manage over 1 million acres of public land all across our state. We are the largest landowner in New Jersey. We steward our state parks and our forests and wildlife management areas and historic sites, right? We protect the fish and the wildlife. Those features, parks and then fish and wildlife, are unique to DEP in New Jersey. Most other states don't have that feature. And then we also provide investments in natural capital for communities, right? Something we call community investment. But when we say community investment, we mean investments in nature that serve the community, right? And one of the things that we'll hear through this seminar series is how DEP goes about administering large amounts of funding that help to better serve our communities. So if I just go back to those buckets real quick, right? Air, land, water, right? Hazardous materials and solid waste, parks and open spaces, fish and wildlife, community investment, right? Those 8 areas are the main areas of DEP, right? And then superimposed on those 8 main areas, which are led by what we call assistant commissioners, right? Superimposed on those 8 main areas are policy driving forces that sit atop the organization, like our Office of Environmental Justice, like our Office of Climate Resilience. I see our Deputy Chief Climate Resilience Officer for the state of New Jersey, Nathia Gastafilion, right here. Thank you for being here. And other offices as well, legal and regulatory affairs, and our diversity and inclusion, and our division of science and research, and environmental health analysis. I see Christine Schell here with us, right? These superimposed above the environmental media sections, they help drive the policy endpoints that we want to see. They help us to further the promise of environmental justice through science, through policy development, through on-the-ground assistance for our communities like the Office of Environmental Justice provides. And so it's within that structure that we do a lot of different things. Yes, we are the place you go to get permits to build certain things, but we are not the only place in the state of New Jersey that a developer or a member of the business and industry community has to come to get permits to do certain things. Right? And one of the points that I think is important in this respect, and I hope that as we get through this seminar series, we help to sow an appreciation of, is that when there is a environmental challenge in your community, or when there is a proposed new facility that you may be in favor of or opposed to, that is proposed to be located in your community, there's a high likelihood that the DEP has to authorize some element of that, but DEP is never the only government entity that is involved in those types of decisions. And so one of the things we'll hear throughout this seminar series is the criticality of understanding permitting processes that are at work always at the local, at the county, and at the state level, including at DEP. And one of the functions of our Office of Environmental Justice is to help folks to understand that. Right? Because even where DEP is not directly involved in a matter, or we may not have permitting authority, our department, our Office of Environmental Justice within DEP can help to point community members to where it might be best for them to engage, to have input and engagement and influence on the outcomes in their communities. So I'll give you a fine example. You know, one of the driving concerns at the community level we hear a lot about in recent years is the proliferation of warehousing. The DEP has almost no authority over the permitting of warehousing, right? And why is that? Why is that? And why do I offer that example? I offer this example so that you can develop an understanding of where, while there are some features across our landscape that you may think, oh, this has an environmental, there's an environmental implication. You know, too much land cover can result in a lot of flooding, for example. And so the DEP must be involved in the decisions of where to put warehouses. You know, that makes sense. That thought process makes sense, but it's not exactly how government works. Local government decides largely where things can go, right? That's the way to generally understand it, that your local government, your local land use planning board, your local city council, they all decide where on the landscape something can go, What the DEP has, what we call jurisdiction over, is in most instances, not all, in most instances where that thing, whatever it is, warehouse or factory on the landscape, if that thing is going to pollute our air or land or our water, then the DEP gets a say, and not always. So it gets complicated, but I think it's important to understand the sort of jigsaw puzzle of government into which we fit. But my main point being that one should never underestimate the power of their voice, the ability to affect outcomes where you live. And if you may not know how to do that, we are here for you to help you to figure out how to do that, even if it's not in our world. And our Office of Environmental Justice does this routinely. You know, there may be a member of a community here in Newark or elsewhere that reaches out to Kandyce's team and says, I'm concerned about XYZ in my community. And it may not be the case that we have a direct involvement at the DEP level, but we can point you in the right direction, right? And that is part of the service that we believe we owe. Because despite our limited ability to affect some things, we do have a great amount of dedication to helping our communities preserve their environment. Because we're guided by this really one simple principle, which is that we in the government do not own the environment. We are just its temporary keeper. It is the people of the state of New Jersey who own their environment. And this is a constitutional thing. Our state constitution says that the air, the land, the water, the fish, the wildlife, our waterfronts, which should have vibrant public access and you should be able to enjoy them, all of these things, they don't belong to the government constitutionally. They belong to each and every one of us. And so I hope this series helps you to learn a little bit about how to navigate all of these different elements of government, how to get familiar with the DEP, and we sure hope that we see you when we're out in communities doing work and that we're able to help you. And with that, I'll offer, 5 minutes for questions or something? Okay. That's what Kandyce said, that's all right, and she's the boss. I know she said I'm the boss. It's so not true. So I think there's a microphone here that we can run around. If folks have a question, I'll try to take a few, but not take up all the time. I know we have a lot to cover today. But I thank you very much.
Hi, thank you for that great introduction. I'm not sure if this will come up in the later sessions, but my question is regarding to drinking water quality. You mentioned that one of the broader categories for NJDEP pertains to water.
Yes.
And I know that there's a website, Drinking Water Watch, under NJDEP. So I'm wondering if there's any talks or ideas in place to link Drinking Water Watch to community databases, so community demographics, to make it somewhat easier to determine if there's any violations in place, who is specifically being affected by those drinking water violations.
Yeah, this is a great question. I appreciate that. I didn't get your name. I'm sorry.
Sorry, my name is Ray Cade.
Ray, thank you so much for that question. So when I say DEP DEP water oversees a lot of things. We oversee the quality of our drinking water, as well as the quality of our waterways, and we steward the investments in the improvements of infrastructure. Roughly $1 billion a year DEP is putting out into communities to improve water infrastructure. And so with respect to drinking water, what we call water supply in our parlance, what we do is oversee every water system in the state to ensure that it is compliant with the Safe Drinking Water Act. Right? There are more than 3,000 water systems in tiny New Jersey, if you can imagine that. Most of them very small systems. And these water systems, they send us their results. They have to take sampling results on a certain frequency, and they send them to us on paper. So that's for problem number one, okay? That's problem number one. And so we're in a very long-term process of trying to improve the way that we maintain our water quality data. Because what you'll notice on Drinking Water Watch is that it's lagging, right? Because what we generally do is look at quarters, right? We look at semi-annually and annually to determine whether water quality parameters are in keeping with where they should be. And so you'll see when you use Drinking Water Watch that there's always a bit of a lag in when that data is available. Right? There's a long-term improvement program that we're undertaking to improve upon that. Now, there's a number of ways that we can link data to other sources, and I will stop there because I am by no means a data technician, but you have one of the best here with you today. Christine Schell, raise your hand, stand up. Right, so yeah, but Christine and her team are responsible for developing the New Jersey Environmental Justice Mapping Assessment and Protection Tool, or EJMAP, right? And bringing together points of data to make that very accessible to our communities and to help drive improvements in justice and equity outcomes. And while Drinking Water Watch is lagging behind, I know that it is a priority for our team. We've been receiving investments that Governor Murphy has made in our state budget to improve upon our water quality management data analytics over the last 2 budget cycles, around $5 million, but it takes a lot of time to get that implementation underway. But it's a really great point that we can elaborate more on as this series goes on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for those introductory remarks. My name is Brooke, and I'm with the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance. And you mentioned saying if that thing will pollute our air, land, and water, then you have the ability to give input. So hopefully this will come up later, but I just wanted to ask now, how is that quality or that determination of pollution made, and what is the benchmark for that? How many folks give input on that? And then also if you could speak to what happens if folks disagree about whether or not that's polluting, and what are the avenues of engagement and input, particularly for communities who feel like it's polluting and may disagree with an entity that says it doesn't.
Sure. So this is the crux, Brooke. This is the crux. Where do we start as a point of measurement to determine what the benchmark is? Who sets that benchmark? How is it set? And then at what point does an emission into our air, land, or water of some substance, whatever it may be, at what point is that how do I say this? At what point does that threaten public health, right? And so there are a lot of different ways that this is analyzed, and it is dependent upon the two things. Number one, the type of media that we're in, right? Whether it's air, land, water, right? Just broadly speaking. And it can be, and within water, it's different, right? Different for drinking water than it is for wastewater, than it is for storm water, right? Than it is for our water quality management within our waterways, right? So there are all these different standards that are set, right? And those are usually set by the federal government, right? The federal EPA, which is the master oversight of the DEP, right? So the federal government oversees the state government. The federal government sets a standard in most of these media, and then the states must comply with that. And it is considered what we call the federal floor, right? The state can then decide whether to set a better standard than that federal floor. New Jersey has a long, proud, bipartisan history of almost always going above that federal floor. There are many states where the MEs, the secretaries, the commissioners, are restricted by their legislature for doing any better than the federal government, right? But New Jersey, in many ways, invented environmental law and regulation, and we should be proud of that. So the first step is understanding what that baseline is, and that baseline is always determined based on risk to public health, and this is very, very, very scientific, deeply scientific. Right? There's a big difference between what actually affects public health and what we perceive may affect public health. And so that is often a point of disagreement, but then there is also a distinction between how standards are set and applied. They're largely developed based on large regional areas, right? And not necessarily based upon a really discrete, localized community experience. That is what our environmental justice law and our EJ map and our environmental justice rules seek to change, to improve upon, to look harder at that very granular, localized experience. And that's a first. That's a first in the nation and a first in the modern history of environmental law over the last 60 years. So we're doing that together. Building the plane as we're flying it, as they say. And I think there was one more question up front here. I'm just making sure with my boss, Kandyce, here that I'm not going over time too much.
Commissioner, hi. My name is Regina Towns. I am the port organizer with South Ward Environmental Alliance. And also, I am a retired longshoreman working out of Port Newark of 31 years. So my question is, how can we ensure air monitoring in Port Newark?
Oh, this is such a great question. So I'm just gonna give a little bit of background here to Regina's question, and it's good to see you. I think it's really so valuable that you bring that lived experience of being a longshore woman to the work that South Ward is doing. And now, Kim, I'm really just upset that I always walk around, Kandyce can attest to this, with my white South Ward water bottle everywhere I go. So I'm sad I forgot it today. So the first thing to understand to contextualize Regina's question is, within that system of environmental governance, how we treat stationary sources, the factories, the incinerators, the sewage treatment plants, how we treat stationary sources is different than how we treat mobile sources of emissions, of pollutants. And that has long been a point of tension within both the environmental regulatory space where I live and within the community space where many of you are trying to influence good outcomes. So there are different sets of standards that apply to that one point source, we call them, that is emitting pollution out into the air or down into the water, onto the land, than our cars, for example, right? Or the forklifts at the port, or the drayage trucks, or the field tractors, or there's different types of standards that apply. They're not the same. And for lots of reasons, there's good scientific reasons for that. But in order to address pollution in port facilities, which are a significant point of pollution, because that localized pollution from, say, diesel-powered machinery at a port, that has significant impacts to the air quality and then potentially to the public health for communities around that area. In fact, in many instances, that type of mobile source pollution is a lot worse for us than those big stationary sources. We've gotten really good over the years at putting pollution control equipment on those stationary sources. But those mobile sources, right, you can are much trickier because while standards improve over time, right, the exhaust coming out of our cars and out of newly developed field tractors, drag trucks, those types of systems have improved over time as well. But on the stationary side, we force improvements over time through permitting. That doesn't happen on the mobile side. If you've got an old piece of equipment, you can run it for as long as you want. And that old piece of equipment may have a lot of pollution compared to a new piece of equipment. So that's a long way of saying, Regina, one of the things that we have to get better at is having localized air monitoring within communities that are port adjacent. Right? And there's a lot of programs that are recently funded to do that. EPA has a new ports grants program. The DEP has been working more on air monitoring, and you'll hear in this series about that. But we also have to encourage the turnover of those fleets so that folks aren't just sticking with the really old equipment. And we've got to upgrade the standards for those, right? And we did that recently. There's a cargo handling rule that we're now requiring, the equipment to have better, more efficient operating engines, if you will, so that they are less polluting. But it is a long-term endeavor. Just like you can't make someone give up their old car that pollutes more. And I learned how to drive on a 1986 Mercury Grand Marquis, right? Plenty of those still going around. They pollute a lot more than a Toyota Corolla made in 2024. So it's a long-term endeavor. I think there was one more question that I'm going to shut up.
Hi, my name is Pete Jansen, and I'm wondering how can DEP become more involved with the fair share housing that's going on? There's a new cycle coming up this year where everything's going to be remapped and recalibrated, and it's putting a lot of pressure on communities that are not able to support themselves in areas of flooding and other risks.
Yeah, this is a really good question as well. So I think what I hear in your question is how can we as DEP make sure that as affordable housing developments are pursued, that they're done in an environmentally responsible way that also protects public safety from flood risk. And what we've seen happen a bunch in recent years, oftentimes as there are affordable housing settlements that are reached where towns have to meet their obligations, as well they should, to provide affordable housing for residents. That because of constrained developable space, oftentimes there has been a determination that, well, the affordable housing should be located in this place that looks open, that looks like it can be developed, but oh wait, turns out that's in a flood hazard area. And this has happened sort of over and over again. Thankfully, one of our assistant commissioner for watershed and land management, Katie Angarone, has a standing engagement with Melanie Walter of HMFA around this issue. And so we're trying to make sure that folks understand that we have to be incredibly careful about how what we presume about developable land, just because if you're looking on a Google map, nothing's there. Our flood zones are bigger than they once were, as I think is obvious, right? There's flooding in places that there wasn't. And thankfully, last year, Governor Murphy and I adopted, with the support of so many folks right here in this room, a new inland flood protection rule that increases the flood protection standards for new development so that folks are not left a victim to flood after flood after flood. And that only applies to new development, of course, but would apply to new affordable housing development as well. making people safer. And with that, I'm going to wrap up and turn it back to Kandyce and just say thank you all for giving your time to this endeavor. We need you, so thanks.
All right, thank you, Commissioner, for those remarks, and hopefully that gives you a brief. I'm sure the Commissioner could go on for another hour just giving you the detail about how DEP is structured and how we're organized and what our jurisdiction is and where it stops. So that's just meant to give you a brief overview of all of that, and hopefully it kind of plants the seeds of interest for you to kind of go along those tangents a little bit further, and we're around throughout the day if you have specific questions. I know that there are a few questions online. I'm so sorry that we could not get to you. We have to move on in our agenda to stay on time, but we will get back to you and answer your question in writing following this session. So a couple of things before we move on. The Commissioner mentioned EJ MAP. Just want to make a point to note that if you stick with us in this seminar series, that will come up in more detail in Seminar 2. And also Drinking Water Watch will cover a bit today, but we have a whole segment on water during Seminar 3. So Seminars 2 and 3, you want to stay tuned for that for EJ MAP and water. So next, I want to invite up Chloe Desir. Chloe is a member of the state's Environmental Justice Advisory Council. So this is an 18-person volunteer body that really serves the DEP and the Commissioner, providing advice and guidance on ways to integrate and incorporate environmental justice into everything that the state does. And so we're really thankful for the leadership and the service of our EJAC members. And so I want to turn it over to Chloe just to give another perspective and a welcome for why you are all here today. So Chloe.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, reciprocation. I'd like to thank the Department of Environmental Justice and Protection for hosting the series with the aim of increasing accessibility for residents of overburdened communities to engage in environmental decision-making. I'd like to especially thank the Office of Environmental Justice with Kandyce Perry and her staff, Hannah, for being able to bring me into this space and speak to you all this morning, and working towards strengthening and maintaining the relationships needed to ensure the people are heard. This seminar is essential towards creating accessible space to address issues happening in environmental justice communities like Newark, specifically like we're at today. And I'm grateful to be a part of the EJAC, seeing fellow members like our chair, Kim Gaddy, and Galia here today to represent grassroots communities alongside fellow representatives, many of whom are actually from Newark, to continue such strong advocacy for the city as well as the state. OBCs, overburdened communities, bear the brunt of environmental pollution and its adverse effects. They are disproportionately affected by issues such as air and water pollution that communities like Newark already know too well. With the city hosting 3 power plants with the proposal of a 4th, scrap metal yards in too close of a proximity to where children and adults live, work, and play, an incinerator that gets away paying measly fines after committing hundreds of air permit violations, and lack of green spaces despite an abundance of brownfield sites. Unfortunately, these communities have historically been excluded from participating in decision-making processes that directly impact their well-being. Through continued conversation and engagement with residents, education, outreach programs, and community involvement initiatives like this, we can begin to take steps towards influential change. This is an opportunity for residents to learn about their rights, understand how they can contribute to decision-making processes effectively, and advocate for equitable practices that benefit both the community and their environment at large. So I'm excited for us to continue on and engaging in this work and being able to see how we can make progressive change in the future. Thank you.
Thanks for those really powerful words, Chloe. Everything that she said is spot on. You know, we're here today to teach you and so that you can learn about us, but we're also here to meet and engage with you so we can learn from you. You all know your communities best. You know what you're struggling with. You know what pollution exists in your communities, and it's only through that joint collaboration and engagement do you help steer DEP and state government towards the solutions that will affect and improve your quality of life. So really grateful for the partnership of our Environmental Justice Advisory Council members and all of you advocates in the room and online today.